We'll do a bit more meditation in a moment, but we have a theme for tonight, which is a vision of human existence. And it started last week. We got the next few weeks we're on a very important set of lectures, Buddhism for Today and Tomorrow. And these lectures were given 50 years ago by the founder of Triratna's Sangharakshita. And he gave these lectures when this LBC building was being built. So he gave the lectures in Brighton, and he was very aware that the London Buddhist Centre, at the time he was giving these lectures, was actually being formed. It was an old burnt-out fire station, and it would be the first large urban Buddhist centre in London. Certainly the very first one, open to the public every day, and certainly the first of its kind in East London. So he gave these lectures at a very important time in Triratna's development. It'd been 10 years old roughly, so that's pretty young actually for a spiritual tradition, a spiritual movement. And it was at the time that a great project was happening, this project. And people were having to imagine, well, what's it going to be like? What's it going to be like having a Buddhist centre right in the heart of East London? And it was also a time when East London, and particularly this part of East London, Bethnal Green, was definitely one of the most deprived areas in the UK. They would do sociological studies on Bethnal Green back in those days, because it was sort of like known really for its poverty. So suddenly there was this great, there was a Buddhist centre. Buddhism was pretty new to the West still. It started arriving in the 60s, but really, very kind of fringe. So it was certainly very new, and into mainstream, it was not in the mainstream. Meditation was not in the mainstream. Yoga wasn't in the mainstream. I always say this. Vegetarianism wasn't in the mainstream, so everything was kind of new. And it was like, well, what does it look like to have a public centre in London, in East London, that's open to everybody, that actually speaks to what people need now? So yes, it's drawing from 2,500 years tradition, but how are people, and all kinds of people, because it was pretty diverse, this area even then. So how do all kinds of people engage in a tradition that is 2,500 years old, that is with its roots in the East? So it was called the London Buddhist Centre. It wasn't called some other Sanskrit name. It could have been. Other places are called, other names, but it was like, no, it's the London Buddhist Centre. So a Buddhist centre for London. And, we were the first to coin the term, being the times it was. And it was really communicating a message. So the lectures are really Sangharakshita trying to his vision of what Triratna's about, and really why build a movement really now? What's it trying to do? And the first lecture was last week, explored it last week, and the first of lecture is a method of personal development. So this was him talking about meditation, talking about the practices. How do we grow? That was the first question. How do we grow? Why do we want to grow? And how do we grow? What's the methods that are going to help us do that? So that was last week's. And this week is a vision of human existence. Why grow? What are we actually trying to get to? What is possible for human beings? If you were to imagine what's possible for you, and what's possible for others, what would come into your mind? What would come into your mind? What would come into your heart in terms of what's your vision of what's possible? Or even what is it you want? We're all human. We have that in common. Probably none of us consciously chose to be here. like thought, yeah, I'm going to, apparently, it might be possible. But most of us probably here don't have a sense of who we were before we were human, before we were in this body. But tell me if I'm wrong. Does anyone here can acknowledge some other memory of something else? Probably most of us don't, right? We just find ourselves here. And we find ourselves in this set of conditions of being in whatever family or caring context that we've been born into, and in this kind of world. Okay, we're in this country, it looks like this, my street is like that, my family looks like that, I'm this kind of shape, this kind of colour, this kind of gender. All of that comes to us. Do you remember that when you were young, sort of going, oh, I'm a this, I'm a whatever this is, I'm a girl, I'm a boy, I'm not sure what I am, do you remember those kind of like awareness of, I'm in this family and it's not like that family? And I certainly do. I really remember being a certain age and looking around and going, well, what am I doing here then? Why am I here? And it was East London, actually. I don't know if I like it. But, I was hard to, I didn't like it. Truth be told. But, who could I say that to? Because it seemed to me that everyone around me was completely accepting of what we were in. No one seemed to be having those questions like, why am I here? And like kids are really great when you're with young kids, because they'll go, and I remember my son saying this, why is the sky blue? And I was like, that's such a good question. I don't actually know. Why is it blue? Those very basic, essential questions. Why is this the way it is? Why am I the way I am? Why are you the way you are? So it's like we come into the world and we probably might forget that we had those kind of questions. But probably most of us did at some point in time. And then what happens is we don't get responded to. You might be lucky and somebody might have really engaged with you with that question, yeah, which was fantastic because it opens up the world. But often the more we ask those questions, the more we go, oh, shush, or I don't know. And I do remember my son asked me, I'm like, gosh, I really don't know, but I want to just stay with the question because he's asking something really interesting. And then sometimes it was like, yes, we can't talk about that now, we've got to do this thing, You'll get ready for school, whatever it was. But so we have these really fundamental questions that we often don't know how to ask or express, or if we do, it's a struggle to get a response that we understand and resonate with. But I don't know, some of those questions don't ever go away. They just go to they just become dormant. They just go to the background of our experience. And then what happens is something happens in our lives. And as we grow up, in my experience, a difficulty. And I think, how did I get here? Why is things the way they are? And then, of course, we can also get to, what is it I really want? Because I don't want this. So what is it I want? So from a Buddhist point of view, these questions are really healthy, positive questions. If you start, there's a saying that says, the quality of your answer depends on the quality of your question. Ask a good question, it's going to lead you somewhere. So what is it one wants? What is it we're here for? What is it we're trying to do? These are really great questions. What is a vision of being human? Our own human lives, but also what are we collectively here to do? So I've thrown a few questions out, and I'd love it if we just, maybe in threes, just explore that a little bit, yeah? So a vision for your life, or human, or being human. What is that, personally or collectively? Have a discussion and see what you come up with. Okay, so I'm fascinated with what you come up with, what you shared. So anyone want to share vision of what it is to be human, or what you see for yourself as possible?
Like space and time to be creative.
So creative space, yeah. We know on some level we have the possibility of being creative as human beings, yeah. But it's also having the space and time to do that, yeah, like that. Thank you.
We were talking about community.
Mm.
Can you explain because we were talking about community. Sort of similar but different.
Yeah, I think different types of connection.
Connecting with others.
With others, like the shared understanding between individuals or groups of people.
Yeah.
Supporting each other.
So that feels. I mean, today I walked in the park, Victoria Park, and it was just lovely. At one point, I just stopped. I was chatting with somebody. I was on a walking meeting, and we just stopped and we just looked at everybody sitting in different ways together on the grass, and it was like, this is a very beautiful scene, because it's human beings doing what we can do so well, which is just connecting with each other. And it felt very peaceful. No ideas what the communication was, but it felt really peaceful and good. Mm-hmm. So that simple way of connecting. Yeah. Thank you. So we've got being creative, connecting. What else does it feel like for you that feels like, I'm enjoying being human here. I'm enjoying, this feels good, this feels meaningful. Right.
All together, and I gave an example that isn't my own, but I'll tell it because I guess it kind of like makes sense. My husband was in a shop a couple of weeks ago, a clothing shop, and David Cameron was there, and they made eye contact. And his first response was to give him a mouthful about Brexit.
Oh.
And nobody knows what husband, he could do that very well. And he didn't, because he stopped and he remembered that he had a son, a disabled son that died a few years ago. And he said he saw him as a dad who experienced a loss, and he humanised him.
Did he say anything to him in the end? Or no just acknowledge?
No, he didn't say anything, but he did give him a mouthful.
Yeah.
I'm really proud of him for that, because that's basically what it's about. It's like, the other stuff didn't matter.
Yeah. So so in a very fundamental way, we share experience, and we identify with shared experience, whatever that is. And your example there is, we share experience and we also notice difference. So in your example there, your husband was very aware when this famous. Actually, most young people now wouldn't even know who David Cameron was. But, back in a few years ago, he was very famous. He was a Prime Minister of the UK. And your husband sees him in a shop, and his instinct, because of his different views, so awareness of difference. And suddenly there's a different kind of set of views, and he wants to kind of go, hey, you put through this Brexit policy, which made UK however your husband experiences it. But he also remembered at that time that, yes, David Cameron's a father, and he had a son who was disabled and who passed away. And your husband's a father. So, he suddenly felt an empathy. It's quite a lot going on in that short space of time, seeing somebody in the shop. But that's actually what it is also to be human. We have a kind of strong response, don't we? We can have quite an instinctual response to things, but then with reflection and with a widening of experience there, broadening of awareness, your husband was actually, my instinctive response here isn't the whole picture. There's actually something else here, which is this man, has been through some hard times. He's suffered, and he suffered in a way that I don't want to suffer. So he was able to really connect. That's beautiful, yeah. So shared experience is also something that makes it feel very worthwhile somehow. Like it's fundamental to human experience. And those of us here, all of you here would have remembered COVID as well. And there were times in that, even though in some ways it was an excruciating experience in so many ways, for a lot of people, not for everybody, but for a lot of people, there were moments in that where it was like, gosh, I really know what it is. Like I really care about people I don't know. And I really want to be in connection. Yeah. And I really want to know how to do my life in a way that feels creative. It was really not being in relationship with each other and being curtailed in what we could do almost brought it into sharp relief what we needed to do to feel alive. Yeah, do you all kind of agree with that? So yeah, thank you. Great. In a way, we've said what's personal for us, but it's also collective. You know, I think we can all agree with the things that have been shared. And it's very interesting then, after the break, we'll look at, well, what did the Buddha say? This being who went on this great journey and discovered and became enlightened, became free of suffering. What was his vision then of what it is to be human? And how did he communicate that? And how has it come down to us? So we're going to be exploring that. And there's definitely there's a lot of connections with what we've shared already. So that's fascinating for me, because enlightenment is this great lofty, can feel like this lofty, far away experience that, you know, hardly anybody experiences. And yet, actually, when you really look at the Buddha's vision, it really speaks to some of what we've already spoken about today. Great, okay. So vision of human existence. And as I said, it sort of comes very much from this book. So they're out there, if in the bookshops, if you want to, or online, if you want to purchase one. And actually, I obviously, in preparation for this, I actually reread the lecture. And I remember reading it years ago and thinking, wow, it's got everything in it, really. In a few pages, he somehow manages to describe what I think is kind of essential for us to reflect on when we're thinking about a vision of human existence. So I found that quite fascinating, rereading it and going, okay, there's a lot in here packed into a few pages. So really, I just wanted to kind of just share with you some of the key reflections and then see what emerges from the sharing that I'm doing and that we're engaged in today. And the first thing that Sangha talks about is the word vision. Because I asked you earlier, well, what is your vision? What is your vision of a human existence, your human existence? What's possible for us personally? What's possible for us collectively? And, you know, what do we actually mean by vision? That's the first thing. What do we actually mean by it? And the Sanskrit word for this, which is obviously how Buddhism was shared early, is darshana. And darshana means that which is seen. So it really means sight. And he emphasizes this because he says it's not philosophy, because we often talk about Buddhism as philosophy. But he says it's not philosophy, it actually comes from this word, vision is really from this word darshana, which means sight, that which is seen, rather than philosophy, which can be a kind of abstract concepts, a reflection of abstract concepts, or a set of abstract ideas. He says it's not that, it's very much something that you see. And if you think about what you see, it's very immediate. You know, you have an actual experience. You're not thinking about your experience, it's there. And in a way, that's the first sort of inkling of this word vision. And the Buddha's vision, if you like, it's a matter of direct experience and direct perception. It's what you actually experience, what you actually see. So therefore, concepts it's not about concepts. It's about what's there, what's in your experience. And there's another word that's really important, another Sanskrit word, which is drishti. And drishti means view or perspective. So when you see something, it gives you a certain perspective. And, you know, like if you're I've never done visual art training, but I'm about to speak about it. Just a heads up in case you're an artist. My thinking of that is they talk about perspective. Draw this bunch of flowers, this bunch of grapes from different perspectives. Is that right? Those of you artists, yeah? So you're kind of like, you can have the same thing, a bunch of grapes, a bunch of flowers, and see it from all different vantage points. Relate to it, have an experience of it, and then relay it in that way. How we see things, the vantage point of which we see something, changes our experience of it. Yeah? And then our view. So drishti means view, the view you have of an experience. So we have this direct seeing, the direct experience itself, and then we have the particular view of it, yeah, the vantage point, the particular perspective. And then Buddhism says that actually then what you need to do is then think, okay, there's a vision, there's a view, but there's different views that we can have. There's a right view and a wrong view. A right view and a wrong view. So let's look at what this is. Actually, what's really helpful in this article, he doesn't go wrong means bad. It's really important, this, because I think when we think of things being wrong, think, oh, I've got it wrong, I'm bad, there's something wrong here, something needs fixing. But actually, it's not so much that. It's much more kind of like, ultimately, I think of it as what is more aligned with the truth of things. But what he does, what Sangha does, is actually go back to the whole vision, whole sense of sight. If we go back to sight in a literal sense, what we actually see, a wrong view would be something which is, well, if you think about eyesight, if you have, poor eyesight, what does that actually mean if you have poor eyesight? Does it mean there's something bad wrong with you if you have poor eyesight? It's just what's happened, isn't it? It's just what's happened. But we try and help ourselves correct our poor eyesight, yeah? And luckily we can do that. If you have poor eyesight, what is that? What's going on? It's a difference, but it's not. It's a difference which, so we've got poor eyesight. I wear glasses when I'm having to do close reading or when I'm on a computer. Yeah, never used to. I used to basically, have great vision, but now I wear glasses when I have to do that work. And basically, it means that it can mean two things. You can be short-sighted, you can be long-sighted, right? So if you're short-sighted, it means you can't see things that are, help me out, far. You can't see things that are far. And if you're long-sighted, it means you can't see things that will close up to you, yeah? But either way, it's like your range is impacted. You do not have the full range. So that's one thing. Your range is limited in some way. Also, it can mean that it can be distorted. If you ever been on the computer for a long time, suddenly, your eyes can feel a bit blurry. Or if you've been, doing some very, very close work, you sort of get up from that and suddenly it's like you have to spend a bit of time and you're refreshing your eyes. And actually blurs, your vision is blurred. So it could be distorted. So your range could be limited, it could be distorted, or it can be restricted. So it might be that you have great eyesight in one, but not in the other. So things that come at one, you can see really well, but if it's coming at an angle, you can't see. It's a bit like going to a theatre or a show, whereby they're like, the view's restricted, and you're kind of going like that to all the whole show to kind of see, yeah? That is sort of wrong view in terms of how we live our lives. So we see things, but actually sometimes we don't see the full range. We only see what is in front of us or what we've been conditioned to see. So we're seeing things in a limited way. We also can see things in a way where it's distorted. What could it be distorted by? What can our experience of life be distorted by? Our conditioning again, yeah? It's like we've just had a certain set of experiences and we somehow think that that set of experiences is how everything is for everybody. And then we're walking around with that set of experiences as the literal sight, glasses that we're putting on, yeah? So it can be limited, it can be distorted, and it can be restricted. And it's restricted as well by views as well. So conditioning and views. So like prejudice is one of those things. Discriminate, where we just like, I like this, I don't like that. I feel comfortable like this with these set of people. I'm not sure about those set of people. So we're not open to the full range of our experience. And we sort of confining ourselves, limiting ourselves by the way we see things. And this is just what it is to be human, actually. If you think about it, do we grow? Do we kind of emerge into life with full perspective, with full understanding? Do we see all aspects of our experience? It's amazing, isn't it, when you see this in families, you know, you have a similar experience of an event, or in friendship groups, or in work, similar experience of an event, you're all in the same temporal event. You start talking about it, unpacking it, and you're like, whoa, how have they come away with that view and I've come away with this view? And that's the kind of crux of it, because we all are conditioned in the way we see. So when an experience comes, we're not interpreting actually, we're not actually perceiving it as it is. We're perceiving it as we are. We're perceiving it as from the vantage point of the various conditions that we've had, the lenses that we literally have put on through just growing and then accumulating all the various experiences we've had in our lives. And this is quite fundamental to a Buddhist vision. So if our vision can be weak, as in it's quite limited in range, if it can be restricted, it can be distorted, then what is right view then? What would be a right view? An open mind, being able to take in. An open mind really suggests to me that you're able to take in more of experience. So when someone says, hey, what do you think about this? You're not just doing that instinctive response. It's a bit like the example that you gave earlier around your husband. It's like, actually, he was able, in that moment of being reactive, he was able, hang on a minute, there's more to this being, this person in front of me than just my views of him. Yeah? He's able to take in the more of the range of experience. So you're open in that sense. Anything else? What else might right view be? Yeah.
Clarity?
Yeah. Clarity. So what is it that clouds our awareness? You know, because clarity is the opposite of being, you know, like clarity is like unclouded, yeah? So things cloud or even distort our experience. Go on.
Things that we want and things that we don't want.
Yeah. Actually, it's kind of quite fundamental. It's emotions. We're driven, as human beings, we're driven so much more by emotions than we think we are. We have our views about things, and then we have this this thing, this kind of like emotional, we were kind of emotional beings. We're sensing beings, we're perceiving beings, and we're emotional beings. And we have a reaction or a response to everything that comes in. Is that right? You can just, I don't know, go on your phone, see something, and then there's a reaction. There's an emotion to it straight away. You can see somebody, smile at them and feel really good. See somebody who scowls at you, feel like, oh, yeah. It's just like that's how we live our day. So therefore, if we're not emotionally aware of what's going on, if we're just kind of going through these experiences, emotions can cloud our experience without us realizing it. We're suddenly reacting to somebody or being a bit sharp with somebody because actually a couple of hours ago we had an emotional reaction we haven't quite processed yet, and it's coming out in that way. Have you all had the experiences like that every day, yeah? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I've put my hand up 3 times in a row.
Yeah.
But can emotions not be part of a clear experience as well?
Absolutely, yeah. This is when the emotions are distorted. And emotions are more likely to be distorted when we're unaware of them. Yeah, when they're just having their effect. And we do the other practice we do, the metta bhavana, the practice of loving kindness here, is so that partly that practice is so we can actually become aware of more of our emotional range, both positively and negatively. Yeah, it's very important to know our emotions, to get to know them. It's like you won't really be free if you don't get to come into relationship with your emotional selves. And it's a bit like they use that analogy of our beings are like a mountain where most of it is submerged under the sea. You just got the top. The top is our conscious awareness, that the iceberg, that's it, not a mountain. The iceberg is that's revealed is our conscious awareness. But the rest of it is deep in the ocean, and that's our unconscious awareness, and so much of that will be emotion. So we're basically things can be distorted often by emotions. We don't take in the full range of our experience. So if it's right view, we're taking in more of our experience. If it's right view, we're also aware of our emotions, and we're aware of what's helpful, what's beneficial. We're not just acting blindly to our emotions. But there's one other thing that he says that's right view needs, and that is energy. So that is a really interesting thing, that actually in order to sustain a really helpful perspective and a way of engaging, you need quite a bit of energy. Because we've all had some insight into experience. We've all gone like, okay, this is what it feels like to be human. This is a helpful thing for me to do. When I act in this way, it has positive effects. We've all had experiences like that. And yet we don't always follow that through. And we don't follow that through partly through conditioning, things like that, but we also don't follow it through because our energy is not concentrated deep enough. It's scattered. And we have different parts of ourselves pulling in different directions. So therefore we can go, right, I'm going to walk every day around the park, or I'm going to exercise, or I'm going to do whatever you think is a helpful thing that you know is helpful, you know is beneficial. You set your intention, yeah? And then quite quickly, at some point, there's another part of you goes, oh, why am I doing that again? Why am I not doing this other thing? You completely forget. Oh yeah, that really works for me. You just forget it because your energy is pulled in different directions. So what meditation does is actually over time, it helps you bring your energies together, deepen your energy, deepen your concentration, so that when a helpful view comes in, you've got the weight behind it to keep going. You're not pulled away, pulled off easily and be distracted. So we need energy for right view. We need energy to pursue the things that are beneficial for us and actually sustain a way of viewing the world that is really helpful. So actually, I think we've probably all had experiences where we've gone from wrong view to right view. Actually, what came to mind for me is probably a real catalyst as to why I started practicing in the first place. One of the key catalysts, I had a series of events that happened in my life where I was like, okay, this is it. I've got to do something. I've got to figure out how to live. I've got to figure out how to live well. I'm not going to work it all. I'm not going to spend my whole life trying to work it out by myself, because someone must have worked it out before me, and I can benefit from their understanding. And I share this story quite a lot because it's a really pivotal one in my life, and one that I still draw on to today. And it's where I was on a plane, and the plane felt like it was going into difficulty. Not felt like, it was going into difficulty. That was my experience and everybody else's collective experience. The stewardesses were really kind of, the staff on board were really kind of anxious, and they were shouting at us, and people were crying, and the people were praying, and it was quite chaotic. And I was young at the time, and I went into fear, great fear, as that was the whole atmosphere. And I just remember like thinking, oh my God, I'm way too young to die. You know, that is all I could feel like, oh my goodness, this is it. I'm going to die, and I'm way too young for this. And I remember my arms on the handrest. It's like, it's funny, isn't it? It's quite a visceral experience, and I can even feel it today. My hand on the armrest, just gripping the armrest, and my stomach really tight. And I realised then that I had, my experience of life up to that point felt very limited. And I just thought, I haven't lived fully. I'm not ready to die because I haven't lived fully. And I looked around me to try and see somebody who could help me at the time, but everybody was caught in their drama, in their panic. And so there was none of us, even the staff, who seemed to be like, keeping it together, really. I mean, the staff were probably doing a slightly better job than we were, but nonetheless, you could feel the anxiety with them as well. And to me, I think what I came up against then was that I hadn't been living with a view or vision that felt inspired, that I was confident in. And it made me think, what have I been doing? I've just been doing stuff. I've just been like having experience after experience. I don't know now, in the face of the fact that this might be the end, I don't know what all that has meant. It's certainly not helping me deal with my situation now. And then I'm always grateful for this moment that happened next. Because whilst that was going on, I suddenly looked out of the window. And I looked out the window, and there was an expanse of black with a star. And then there were all these different colours. It was like there was a rainbow effect. There was oranges and purples and gold. It was just incredible. I've never seen a sky like it since. And I just looked and I looked and I looked. And then at some point, in a way, the whole experience of being in the plane disappeared. And I was just with that experience. That's what my whole perception was at that time. And then at some point it sort of faded, and I came back to the experience of being in the plane. And I thought, God, here I still am. Plane was still dropping feet. People were still shouting and crying. Like the drama was continuing. But what I realised in that moment was that my experience had completely changed. I could feel my body. I could feel my breath. I could feel this steady breath coming and going. I could feel my heart beating, but it was beating not like that. It was really beating. Everything was steady. And I was like, I want to live. That was the first thing. I want to live. But I also I had this clear mind, and out of this clear mind just emerged these questions. And it was like, well, how do I live? How do I live so that when I die, because I knew that was true, that I would actually die one day. How do I live so that when I die, I can die without regret? And how do I love? I didn't know it then, but I thought those questions are connected somehow. And I just stayed with those questions. And what came was, if this plane lands, I'm going to go in search of the answers. And that's what helped me on the path. After when I tell that, someone said, "What happened next, Suryagupta?" I was like, "Well, I got the plane landed, I got on the tube, got home." But this is the thing about concentration as well, because I also knew somehow or other that experience could have faded, and life could have happened and different experiences, and I could have gone, you know what, I know that was important somehow or other, but I've got this to do and I've got that to do. And when I'm a bit older and when I've got myself sorted and when I've got this and when I've got that, when my life feels together, I will then figure that other thing out. I absolutely knew that could have happened. But fortunately for me, unfortunately at the time it seemed like, but fortunately for me, I then had another drama crisis not long after, which then got, you know what? Gosh, life's pretty uncertain, isn't it? There am I thinking, all I've got to do at that time, all I've got to do is finish university. It's all I've got to do is that's the one job I've got to do. But somehow or other, I had another crisis, which then made me realise, you know what, I can't leave that question alone. I've got to go in search of it. Why it came to me was because, right view, wrong view, and perfect view. So the Buddha is said to have a perfect vision, a perfect view. He sees things completely as they are. And I realised in that experience I've just shared that, in a way, I was sitting there in wrong view, if you like. I had a very limited experience of life. I had a really limited experience of what I was here for. I just got to get stuff done, and I want to be successful. That was my main driver at the time. I want to be successful. And what did that mean for me? I wanted money. I wanted security. So that was really what I was aiming for. Suddenly, and I wasn't able to take in bigger truths at that time. I wasn't able to take in the truth of impermanence, for example. That was I don't want to know about that. That doesn't relate to me. I wasn't able even to take in the truth of beauty. I wasn't consciously looking for beauty. Obviously, if I saw a nice sunset, I'd be like, "Oh, isn't that lovely?" And then I'd go on my way. I didn't understand the impact of beauty. And that experience that I had on the plane showed me what beauty can do, because it stopped me in my tracks. And it helped me, it's fascinating really, the thing. Why did the vision of a beautiful, almost mystical sky, why did it have the effect that it had on me? What was going on there? I mean, it took me years to work it out, so because we expect you to have the answer straight away. But for me, it was why did I get into a concentrated state? That's what happened, really, is that all the distractions, all the kind of turbulent emotions seemed to dissipate. And I was left with an open, clear mind that could actually see more clearly, take in more of the experience and sustain a truthful reflection. And that's because beauty has a calming effect on the mind and the emotions. It also deeply nourishes and brings you fully into the present. Because that's what we need to be in our lives. The more fully we are in the present, the more there is behind us. I also had an urgent situation there. So it was almost like, okay, I really don't have time for distraction right now. I really want to find a way to be with this experience, and the beauty, the vastness of that sky somehow gave me a huge perspective. So it did a number of things, gave me a huge perspective. It was deeply nourishing, so I could be very fully in the moment. It helped me feel at one as well. It gave me a feeling that I wasn't alone somehow. So it helped, and then it helped me sustain a reflection, which is what meditation's aiming for us to do, actually. Because when we're meditating, we're really with distraction a lot of the time, a sort of a mind that's not very concentrated, not very focused. That's a lot of our experience. But over time and with effort, those distractions fall away. And what you get is what I experience is like a big mind. You have experiences of higher states of consciousness. And those higher states of consciousness, which we call dhyana, actually stop you from identifying with a very limited sense of self. There's more to you than your conditioning. And there's more to you than, your distracted states. We have a big mind. And in a way, that's kind of what happened in the plane, because once I was in that state, I was able to take everybody in. I wasn't looking, well, help me. Why are you not helping me? I was able to go, gosh, look at us. We all really want this plane to land. And I had a real genuine care for everybody in the plane. So it's like a bigger vision. Dhyana, higher states of consciousness, helps us have a bigger vision, because we loosen our limited sense of self. And we're connected with a bigger experience of life. So a perfect vision is that taken to the highest degree, with all the kind of key teachings, really truths of life. And this is what the Buddha had. He sat under the tree. He was determined to find enlightenment. And then he sits and meditates, and he has this experience. And it's interesting, actually, because different ways of talking about it. But Bhante in this lecture talks about, I'm using this because this is the Wheel of Life, which is a course that starts next week, which I'm leading. But Bhante says that in the Buddha's vision, he actually experienced a wheel. He saw not just his own experience, but he saw everybody's experience as to what it is to be human. And he saw us all on this kind of wheel that just goes round and round and round and round. And there's different aspects of this wheel that he saw. And I talk about the wheel in a moment, but at the end of his enlightenment experience, he really sees that, oh my goodness. He didn't say, oh my goodness, that's my words. I would have been, oh my goodness. What he sees is two modes of being. And he sees two cycles, if you like. He sees a cycle that goes round and round and round and round, a reactive cycle. And he sees another one that's like a spiral. That actually, there's still a going around, but it's a going up and opening and extending. And he realizes that there's two modes of conditions that we're in as not just humans, but all life. We're either reacting to experience, or we're creating experience. So we're either in a reactive mode or we're in a creative mode. One of the fundamental things that he saw that really supports us in this kind of right view is that everything is impermanent. Everything changes. Nothing stays the same. Everything is in a process of flow or flux or change. So there's nothing fixed. Everything is in a process of becoming. So why is that? Why does that view make a significant difference to our experience? It's not having that view that keeps us in a kind of fixed, limited experience. Having that view suddenly helps us open things up. That's a great question. I'm throwing out questions because I think these are questions that you can keep asking yourself. Because remember, what we're looking at is direct experience. Yeah, for you yourself to kind of go, I can see it now. In that plane experience, I had an experience of impermanence. Yeah, it wasn't a teaching, wasn't something I read. It was like, oh my goodness, this isn't certain, is it? What's going to happen here? And maybe things aren't certain. But what that does, I mean, it can make you fearful, of course, you know. But if you're able to sustain that reflection, what that does is gives you a challenge. Well, how do I want to be here then? Rather than assume that everything's going to be the way you imagine it to be, which is what we do. We kind of go, well, tomorrow's probably going to be like this. And the next day is probably going to be like that. And this is probably what's going to happen there because it happened like that before. So it's probably going to happen again. And I don't like this and I don't like that. And I want this and I want that. And it's all going to just work out the way I hope. But I'm fearful that it doesn't. So we sort of do this constructing of our reality, of how we want it to be or we don't want it to be. And then we also do that to the past as well, actually. We kind of go, this was like that. You know, it wasn't like that, it was like this. And then somebody comes and goes, no, it wasn't. That's not how I see it. And then we argue with them. Even though we were both there at the same time. So we're constructing all of the time and we're fixing. This is how I am. I've always been like this. I'm probably always going to be a bit like this. The Buddha's vision says everything is in flow. I am a series of conditions. Nothing's fixed. Even this body isn't fixed, even though it feels very fixed. I'm probably going to look a bit similar tomorrow as I do today. But am I? All kinds of processes could have happened in 24 hours. I might wear different things. You might perceive me completely differently. My actual experience physically might be different tomorrow as it is today. It will be different because nothing is fixed. So if we really can see that and sustain that, what that says to us is, then I can interact with that truth and I can make choices. I can be conscious of what I want to bring into that flow. Because my thoughts, my feelings, my actions are also conditions that I can bring in. Does that all make sense? Does that, I mean, I want to know, does that not just make sense, but is anyone go, well, hang on a minute, I don't know about that. Any questions on that?
I think I do have a question.
Go on then.
I don't know. Are you trying to say we have some control over how we see things and we can see things more in a positive way? And the bigger picture? Talk about the plane, that experience, it seems to be about the bigger picture. And the plane experience was interesting because I took myself fully in, but I also was able to take in more. And the conditions, what shifted in that experience was not necessarily the external plane experience, because that seemed to be, there was changes in that, but we were still in a difficult situation. But what shifted was the perception and view that I brought to it. So it became not one of fear, but one of deeper reflection and a deeper sense of, well, how do I want to be then? And how do I get there? And also, gosh, look at the beauty of things. So how we respond to our experience, whatever it is, changes the experience. And we have to practice that to test it out again and again. Because I can say that and you can go, okay, yeah, maybe I think that's right. But when you start testing it out in your own experience, okay, if there's two modes of being, reactive and creative, I can feel the reactive. I know what that looks like. But what's the creative here then? How can I bring a creative response to this situation that seemingly feels fixed? So then try it. Bring a creative might. It could be a might, it could be a view, it could be a thought, it could be a feeling, it could be an action. Yeah? Then see what happens to that experience and what comes from it. And see if it changes it. Because we are part of the flow of conditions. So what we bring to the conditions changes a set of conditions. And that's what they mean when they say, create your life. You can create your life. You see that on adverts sometimes, personal development adverts, yeah? Take responsibility, create your life. You can dream your future. But actually what they don't always say is the deeper mechanisms of that. Because actually there's a lot of different elements that are involved in that. And in this wheel that the Buddha saw, I mean, this wheel, this is a particular interpretation of it, there are 4 different spokes of the wheel that are all involved in this creative reactive experience. There's an inner dimension, which is basically in the wheel you get this image of people flowing up to the light and then people falling down in the dark. And that is this basic choice that we have. You know, move towards the light or move upwards, open, or down in the dark, narrow, confined, constricted. Basic choice. At any one point in time, we can do one or the other things. But the next spoke, actually right in the middle, the very heart of it is 3 sets of animals, actually. Because the Buddha saw that what drives this kind of confusion and why we don't see things clearly is because we have these strong emotions. We have really strong craving for things. We really want things to be the way we want them, and we want what we want. I remember being in a car with my 2-year-old niece at the time, and we just left, I don't know, a shop, home base or something, and she was sitting in the back and my sister was trying to strap her in, and she was like, no, and we're like, what's up? I want, and she just kept saying, I want. So then we're like, what is it you want? You know, do you want some sweets? No. Do you want a hug? No. Do you want a kiss? No. You know, do you want to go back to the shop? No. What is it you want? And then she just was like flailing about, thrashing around, shouting, and then she just almost like so upset, and she went, I want something. And I was like, oh my God, that's what we do. We don't always know even what we want. We just know we want something. And that's such a strong emotion, you know, that we have. And as you get older, you can do things to kind of satisfy that, right? So that's what the Buddha saw, that we're driven by craving, fundamentally driven by craving. And then we're also the opposite of that is hatred. And it's not always hatred in the kind of like, oh, I hate this person, I hate those. It's just aversion. It's like, I want this and I don't want that. It's the same thing. Yeah? And then this kind of in the middle spoke, represented by these 3 animals, is also the experience of delusion. Well, do I want it? Don't I want it? I don't actually know. I'm a bit confused. And so I don't know how to act. So we're in that too. And ignorance too. Also like, oh, I don't want to know. Yeah, don't want to know. I just want things to be the way they are. Don't want to know what's going on in the world. I don't want to know what's really going on within me. People do that in meditation as well. You know, when you have a retreat or something, And it's like, meditation's like going all right, and suddenly a space opens up and you get concentrated and it's no more distractions. And that's really what everybody wants when they say they want to be concentrated, they want to be relaxed, yeah, they want to be focused. People say they want that, we say we want that, and then when it happens sometimes, it's like, whoops, oh, I don't know about that. Quite comfortable with my surface experience. Where's my thoughts gone? Oh my goodness, yeah. Well, who am I without my thoughts? What's going to happen if I get really focused and concentrate? And it's like, don't want to know. So the Buddha saw that actually fundamentally that's what's going on. And then we have a choice about how we respond to those things. Yeah? Do we react? Do we create? But then we start building our world. This is the next spoke. We kind of build our world, our actual reality based on that. And then you have in this next spoke 6 ways of the way our world can look. So you can be in a Deva realm, which is a godlike realm, which is everything's going beautifully and wonderfully, you have everything you need. Or you can be a hell realm, where it's just awful and you can't wait to get out. Or you can be in a really competitive realm, where you just kind of want to succeed and, do what you need to do to get what you want. So there's all these different realms. And when you look at the world, when you look at the real world and you look at your own experience, you also see yourself in these different realms. And what I love about the wheel, because it's became a very popular image in Tibetan Buddhism, what I love about the wheel is that and particularly the six spokes, is that at any one point in time I can see where I am. And I'm like, my aim is to live in the human realm. In the human realm, I'm making choices. I'm making helpful choices. I'm connecting with others. I'm being creative. I'm sharing experience. And I'm growing. I'm like putting my effort into growing awareness, to growing consciousness. And I'm able to give to others and benefit others. That's the human realm. But we go through all the different realms. And then the last spoke is all the internal mechanisms that go on that creates our actions. So we really look at that in a bit of depth in the course, where we're kind of going, okay, what do I do about when I'm about to react? What's the best thing to do there? I can feel something, there's some stimulus, and I'm either going to react or create, and there's this gap, there's this space before we make that choice. And we really spend a bit of time looking at that, because that's where everything can change. But it doesn't just end there. So that's a circular wheel, but we also have this spiral. And in the spiral one, what we're having there in the spiral is what happens when we're in a creative mode. Because when we're in a creative mode, we keep expanding. We keep expanding and we keep growing. And there's no limits to how we grow. There's no limits to our qualities that we can develop. And in a way, part of being practicing is that you're understanding more and more what the ordinary mind does on the wheel. You're understanding the mechanisms of how to grow, how to change. And you're also learning what to do when you actually find this point of freedom. When you get into the creative mode, you're making the best use of that, because you're understanding that mechanism as well, that journey as well. Rather than like, oh, what should I do? I'm just getting concentrated in meditation. Let me close it down. You're able to keep opening it up. And you're able to kind of go, there's no limits here. There's so much possibility. There's so much beauty. There's so much freedom. Mind is expansive. And you start getting comfortable with expansive states. You start getting comfortable with joyful states. You start getting comfortable with there's more to me than just my conditions. I can become a Buddha. I can become an advanced practitioner. I can become somebody who loves and who lets go of fear. However speaks to you, you can become that. And that's a challenge. That's a challenge of the Buddha's enlightenment, to say, it's up to us. It's up to us to go on this journey, understanding the ordinary mind, learning to be and develop the creative mind, and seeing how limitless the mind is and how limitless life can be. So I'll pause there. If there's any questions, and then I see you had your hand up. Yes.
Yeah, so you spoke about views before, and then we're talking about the reactive and the spiral path and the creative mind. How does views, like, what relationship do views have with these two? Minds?
So we want to. So if you're wanting to cultivate the creative mind and work more positively with the reactive mind, the ordinary mind, we need to have the views that show us how things are. So one of the views is all things are impermanent. That's a truth. And when we start living in alignment with that, then we're going to see things from that perspective. Yeah. But often we don't see things in that perspective. We think things are going to last forever. So we act in that way. So if you have a view that, oh, things are impermanent, that will start permeating the way you are. And then you find yourself more in flow than in fixity.
And flow has to do with the creative.
Yeah. Flow means you're seeing that everything's in a process of flux and conditions. Yeah. Nothing is fixed, which means you can change. Yeah. It means other people can change as well. You're not saying, oh, you're like that and you're always going to be like that. Yeah. But you need the reality of, oh, all things are impermanent, all things are unconditioned. Those are the two of the simple and profound teachings, truths, that if we bring into our experience more, will change our experience. But we can also bring in that there's beauty. Yeah, life can be truly beautiful. There's beauty in life. It's also precious. That's another view. That's also in alignment with the truth.
So all those things help you get onto the reactive mind.
Absolutely.
And then you can get onto the creative mind. The creative mind can help you deepen those views. Absolutely,
yeah. Well, because you have to start having the experience of it. So you have a view that says things are life is precious. You're like, okay, is it? Well, try it out. Can I experience this moment as precious and full? Okay, so do something really simple. This is what we do in the course. Do something really simple, such as eat your dinner mindfully. Like, take it in. And at the end of it, is the experience more richer for you than when you're sitting there like absent-mindedly? Does it feel like you've been there? Yeah. Can you then go to your next activity more present? More with the experience? Yeah. So then it begins to have a cumulative effect. Yeah?
When you say creative, do you mean like learning from things?
Learning things and not reacting in a constricted way. A limited way.
Maybe not letting things affect you.
Well, things affect you, but it's like, what's a beneficial way of being here? What's the most helpful thing for me to do? You're making a choice that's actually more aligned to the way things are than the way necessarily you just want them to be. Yeah.
I have quite like a specific question, but I think sometimes I try to react creatively by actually just react with like a Buddhist label on.
Yeah.
And like specifically, I think when I feel hatred or anger, and I try to respond with metta.
Yeah.
I think sometimes I just like push down the
That's
anger,
right, yeah.
push down the emotions.
Yeah.
What to do with that?
Yeah, so that's a tendency that we can have. We go, okay, it's not really good to be angry, is it? So therefore I'm going to just kind of act like I'm not that angry and try to just be nice. The anger's still there. So this is why meditation is so important, and other practices that will support you, because you have to get into a relationship with the emotions that are there. You don't have to act on negative feelings, but you do have to feel them and get to know them. And actually, and then once you get to know them, you realize, oh, it's all energy. It's just energy. And then you're not hanging on to that feeling in the same kind of way. Yeah. So get into a relationship with it as energy. And it doesn't have to direct your behavior, but you will learn about yourself through coming into a relationship with it. Yeah. And then, because with that energy, you're transforming the energy. The more you get to know it, the more it becomes available to you. And then, of course, you then actually, oh, I feel like this, and you've seen the energy shift in that exploration, and then you can go, what's the most helpful thing for me to do here, for myself and other? Does that help? Yeah. So, but these are practices. So in a way, to really the wheel is such a profound seeing. The Buddha saw this. It's very profound, and yet because it's broken down into different things, we can take one thing and start practicing it. What does it look like in our everyday life? That's the best way to approach it. To actually, create some choices and actions from the reflections. Because then you have your own direct experience of it. It's not becoming an intellectual thing. So just what you described there, if we're working together, we'd be like, okay, what would be the most helpful thing for you to do in those situations? And then you try them out, see the effect, it then changes your experience again. Yeah? Wonderful. Okay. Thank you very much for today. I might see some of you in the course. Next week, it's kind of the series continues, which is a nucleus, I think, of the new society. So what do you do when a group of people practicing the path, making creative choices, learning about their ordinary mind and the expansive mind, what do you do when you bring them together? How do they create and change the world? That's next week's talk. So thank you.